Hi friends, welcome to episode 4 of the Female Inventor. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today because somebody said it might be easier and more relatable if I talk to you guys like this. So I'm going to be just looking at some bullet points and then kind of telling you guys a story. So maybe it'll be a little bit more entertaining and not me just looking down reading. So let's get into it. Today's episode is about Stephanie Kwolek. She is the famous inventor of Kevlar. So we can thank her for stuff like, canoes and jock straps and those pans that we all love that are non-stick. So Stephanie was born in 1923 in New Kensington, Pennsylvania. She learned a love of fabric from her mom, who was a seamstress, and a love of science from her dad, who was a naturalist. Her and her dad would go out and collect plants and learn to catalog them and what plants were good for you, what plants were bad for you, which is a great thing because my grandma did that for us, so we know what poison ivy looks like and poison sumac and the mushrooms that are bad for you. My grandma knows every name of every tree. So I feel like that's a great thing to know, especially if the apocalypse were to happen. When she was in school, she couldn't decide what she wanted to be like most little kids do. She wanted to be a doctor, a teacher, or a fashion designer. None of which is what she ended up doing, but we'll get into that. She was always good at math and always good at science. She was an only child, so, she was spoiled. Because I promise you, if I only had one child, I'm going to spoil them. My dogs are spoiled. Why would I not spoil my child? Also, if you see the ring light, it's because my new light that's supposed to make it good quality is not come in yet. They canceled my order, so I'm waiting on it. There wasn't a lot when I was doing research about her childhood other than she learned a love of fabrics from her mom and about science from her dad. So we're going to go ahead and move on to her college years. When Stephanie started college, she wasn't sure what she wanted to do, but she chose doctorate degree because that was the best way to move up in the world, especially way back in the 30s. Like, that was the way to move up in the world, becoming a doctor. But when you think about it, they didn't let women get degrees in the 30s. So she was fighting the norm, which I think that's what we all should do, is fight the norm, because the norm is not working for us. Unless you got moonies, the norm don't work for you. In order to pay for her schooling, Stephanie went to look for a job. Obviously, because student debt was a thing back then, and it's a big thing now. She went to a place called DuPont. Now, DuPont is where they worked with like fibers and stuff it's basically chemistry stuff to figure out what's the strongest fiber and what you can do with it. She did this so that she could pay for her medical school, but it ended up being her love. She loved chemistry, so she chose to swap majors and she majored in chemistry. She graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 1946. Now, Carnegie Mellon hasn't always been called that. It was called Margaret Morrison Carnegie College. That's a lot to say. So if anybody who's been to college or knows about college, knows about Carnegie Hall, like, that's the big one. I guess it wasn't such a big one back then. It was just a college. She wasn't, like I said earlier, women in the 30s were not allowed to get degrees. They were allowed to go to college, but they weren't allowed to get degrees. Not even the teachers. Even teachers back then didn't get degrees. They got certificates. But she graduated in 1946 and got her honorary degree in 2001. When she graduated, she continued working with DuPont. So at DuPont, she learned how to work with polymer and did a lot of researching on polymer fibers. When Stephanie was in her 40s, she was asked to do research on fibers in extreme conditions. So, like heat and cold and water, like all of these things, she had to test out and see what fibers would work in the most extreme conditions. Which I think that would be so cool, just experimenting and seeing how things work. I'm not good at math, so I couldn't be a chemist, but what I wanted to be was a paleontologist and an archaeologist. You gotta know math to know chemistry, to know paleontology and archaeology, apparently. But I digress. The research involved in this project involved a lot of sciencey words that I cannot say, so we ain't gonna try. She unexpectedly discovered that under certain conditions, polyamide molecules would line up and parallel to form cloudy solutions. Other researchers decided they was not going to touch this because they were used to clear, consistent solutions when they were working with the fibers. But Stephanie decided to spin the fibers and see what she could do. This was the beginning of Kevlar. And if you know anything about Kevlar, then you know that there's no tears, there's no bullies can't get through it, extreme temperatures don't bother it, and so much more. Kevlar is an amazing tool. Stephanie kept working until 1986. She won many awards like the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 1995, the National Medal of Technology in 1996, and the Perkin Medal in 1997. All of these awards were very rare for women. Even in the 90s, it was rare for women to achieve these awards because even today, women are put on the back burner to be homemakers. And we know this. We just accept it and go on about our business. But to me, it seems like she, especially back then, she fought her way to get what she wanted, no matter what. After she retired, she worked as a mentor for other women in science, helping them learn and grow and fight their way through the patriarchy. She also participated in many programs that helped kids learn about science. The discovery of Kevlar still saves lives to this day, with things like police body armor and military armor. We also see Kevlar in our daily lives with frying pans, a canoe, the head of a drum, or even protective gear for athletes. A children's book was written about Stephanie's life called The Woman Who Invented the Thread That Stops Bullets. Stephanie dedicated her life to science. She was never married and she never had children. When her friends were leaving college to go home and be homemakers, she decided she was going to persevere and she was going to be a scientist. She was going to be known for something. And she dedicated her life until she passed away, unfortunately, in 2014 at the age of 90. Can you imagine what it's like to live from 1923 to 2014? You saw so many things. That's crazy. I couldn't imagine. Like, my great-great-grandma lived from 1909 to 2014. She was 104. Can you imagine the things she's seen? She told me one time that she saw her first car and said she was going to marry that man. And that's when she married my grandpa. That's crazy. Stephanie's discovery throughout those years has made such a big difference and an impact on all of our lives. From the way things are made, from the police and military safety, from so many things. We can thank Miss Stephanie Kwolek for the many conveniences in our life that she brought about by discovering Kevlar. I hope that next time you're cooking with your frying pan or playing the drums or paddling your canoe, you think about Stephanie and the wonderful things that she did. Thank you guys so much for joining me this week. Remember that you deserve it, you are worth it, and stay hydrated. I'll see you guys next week.